Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So there's been an attack on the US power grid today. It's currently only affecting 40,000 people, but I'm going to tell you why this is so significant. 2 power substations were damaged by gunfire today, and it's being investigated by the FBI. This is exactly the type of thing you would expect to see in the run-up to a major world war. We've seen these attacks on critical infrastructure intensify throughout the year, whether it's on natural gas facilities, pipelines, either in the United States or in Russia and abroad, including, of course, the most notable one was Nord Stream. But while this only impacts 40,000 people in North Carolina, this is very significant and it's very concerning. And I'm going to tell you why today. Because while only 2 power substations out of 55,000 in the United States were targeted, you will be very surprised and likely mind blown with respect to how few of these substations need to be taken out to cause a cascading nationwide blackout. Okay, now as you can expect, after these power substations were damaged by gunfire, there's been a lot of problems within this region, namely around traffic related issues, because there's no traffic lights right now, people with medical needs, oxygen, things of that nature. And we don't know yet whether this was state sponsored, whether it was just a bunch of backwoods yokels out shooting their guns off at 3 a.m, but it looks as though something like this would have to be premeditated, especially if they were able to successfully take down these 2 power substations. Now, a great resource for you to utilize is poweroutage.us, and that's going to show you where all the power outages are occurring at any given time. So you can go and check that out after this video. It might provide some useful insight. Obviously, if your power's out, you're not going to be able to access it, or if you don't have self-service, but I guess it's kind of useful. Anyways, so let's talk a bit about why this is so important, okay? So there are 55,000 substations in the United States, and this is all from a recent article that was published in August of 2022 by CBS News, and it was a hot topic at the time. The Wall Street Journal picked it up at the same time, and they interviewed a guy named Granger Morgan, who is a professor of engineering at Carnegie Mellon University, okay? And he said that of the 55,000 substations in the United States, guess how many you have to take down in order to take down the entire power grid? 2,000, 3,000, 9. Okay, you only need to take down 9. Now, more conservative estimates indicate that it would be around 20 substations take out to wipe out the entire grid in America until those could be fixed. It would cause a cascading effect that would take down the entire grid. This actually happened in 2003 in the Great Northeast Blackout, where you had several substations go offline, and that put 45 million people in the dark. So this has happened before. Now, what a substation is, it's a electricity box which steps up or steps down the amount of electricity. So either it's converted to higher or lower voltages, okay? And like I said, there's a lot of these, but you don't have to take out a lot in order to cause a lot of problems. And this speaks to how vulnerable our grid actually is. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who work in this industry in the comment section below who will tell you exactly how vulnerable it is. I mean, you have these power lines spanning the entire continent. There's no way in hell that they can possibly defend all of these or fortify all of these to the extent that would need to be in order to protect against something like this. And unfortunately, there's no one agency that oversees the security of the entire nationwide power grid. It's like 3,000 companies stitched together. And of course, there's 3 grids. There's the East, West, and then there's Texas. But I just find that incredible that you only have to take out a few in order to cause major problems. Now, we're going to talk about some specific examples. But first, let's talk about, what would the result of this be if there was a nationwide power outage? Because many of us have experienced short power outages, and we know that that's a big inconvenience. But seldom have we experienced long-term power outages. Maybe some of you have, so you can relate, but we're talking about no electricity first and foremost, which means no lights, permanent darkness. We're going to see an increase in crime. We're talking about no traffic lights. So especially in the densely populated metro areas, there's going to be traffic jams. It's going to be gridlock. Emergency services are either you're not going to be able to contact them, or they're not going to be able to get where they need to go because the streets are going to be gridlocked. There's going to be no rhyme or reason for traffic control. There's going to be no heat, okay, because you need electricity to regulate the distribution of natural gas throughout the country. There's also going to be likely reduced communications. There's going to still be some communications, obviously, but if there's cell towers that are on the same grid as you are, then you're not going to be able to have access to cell service. There's going to be no water because there's going to be no water pumps. There's going to be no banks, no ATMs, and 90% of transactions nowadays are done by credit card or debit. So that means that the only way you're going to be able to go and get supplies if you need to is with cash. And of course, you're not going to want to go to stores, especially in densely populated regions, because they're going to be looted probably within the first few days of something like this happening, because people just won't have, a bunch of people are going to descend onto the stores, and they're not going to realize that there is no ATMs, there's no credit card. They don't have those old credit card machines that they used to. Okay, now you're going to be basically faced with either you have cash or you are a prepper, hopefully, and you're not running out to the store in an emergency like this. But a lot of people aren't going to have groceries. They're not going to have the means to procure supplies. You're going to have hospitals running on backup generators. Obviously, we're not going to have the internet, so there's going to be an information blackout, and there's going to be no refrigeration. So even if you were to get food, there's going to be a lot of people with spoiling food, especially in the south where it's warm. Here, obviously, that's not going to be a problem because our refrigerator is just stepping outside. But our grid is incredibly vulnerable, and it's concerning that there was potential sabotage today on a couple substations. Let's hope that it was just an isolated incident and it wasn't some sleeper cell that was activated that was state sponsored. I'm not going to name the state that everybody might think it is, but you just never know nowadays because, there's plenty of terrorist-like organizations and states who might want to sponsor something like this happening right now. So it'd be very hard to peg down even if we knew it was saboteurs. There was an incident in 2013 at San Jose, okay? There was a gunman who fired at a high voltage transformer at the Metcalf Power Station. They aimed at the narrow cooling fins, causing 17 of the 21 transformers to overheat and stop working. So you don't have to blow up the transformer itself. You just have to find the right fuse or something that will make the thing go haywire and essentially self-destruct. Now that substation was down for weeks. Fortunately, PG&E, who I believe is the agency in California that oversees all of the power distribution, they were able to reroute power to avoid disaster. So the thing with the substations is, if you take out enough substations, you're not able to reroute the power, okay? And this would, they say, brought down all of the power in Silicon Valley. So it could have been very significant. Now, there's also the issue of cyber attack. Obviously, this was a hot attack. This was a kinetic attack, but Russia has demonstrated their cyber capabilities within Ukraine in 2015. I believe they took out a nuclear power plant in 2015. They also took out 60 substations just with cyber alone. So that's another potential threat here as we descend into the winter months. There is always the potential for copycat attacks. We're living in the age also of eco-terrorism, so there could potentially be some groups that are involved that espouse those types of views, but all the more reason to be prepared. Now, I will say that electricity generation is probably lower on the list of priorities for a lot of preppers, namely because it's expensive. I mean, unless you're going down to the hardware store and picking up a very noisy, dirty, smelly, gas-powered generator, which do the job. Of course, they're going to attract every zombie within earshot after the shit hits the fan, which is why a lot of people are opting for the lithium-based solar generators. When you pair it with solar, it's a generator. It generates electricity, okay? A lot of people aren't going to disagree with that semantics, but that's what I call it. I call it a lithium solar generator. Anyways, they're more expensive. People should be primarily concerned with food, water, medicine, means of self-defense, and a way to keep warm. If you have those things, you're probably going to be okay. However, electricity provides a lot of other creature comforts that will be very useful and even potentially life-sustaining things, okay? There's a variety of different ways you can go. We've talked about a variety of different things on this channel before, everything from wind, thermoelectric, hydroelectric. Obviously, the most ubiquitous one is solar right now. And while they are expensive, they're expensive. You can still get smaller, 1 kilowatt, 1,000 watt lithium generators that are just for the purpose of charging your smaller electronics, maybe running a small appliance for a limited period of time, that are within the $500 to $1,000 range. If you want something that's on the level of like a whole home solution, like a Tesla Powerwall, then you're looking at spending $5,000 to $10,000, okay? It's just the way it is. Like I say, it's lower on the priority list, but it can be potentially very useful, and it's not until you're in one of those situations that you're going to know how much you actually rely on electricity. And one of the downsides of being the only one on your street with electricity in the middle of the night is that it's probably going to be well known because people are going to see your house well lit up. So operational security is absolutely very important, which is why I'm not a fan of gas powered generators. There's also the issue of people using these generators. They're going to misuse them. They're going to use them indoors. Gasoline is not renewable in an SHTF situation. Eventually, it's going to run out a lot faster than the sun is going to run out, which is why a lot of people are opting for the renewable energy options. So I've done many reviews of different generators, from Energy to Zender to Nightcore. I mean, the list goes on. We've probably reviewed like 10 companies over the years, and I'm not going to pitch any one in particular, but just giving you some of the pros and cons in light of the events of today, because this is exactly what we would see. And just it's crazy to think that all it would take was a dedicated attack on a few different substations, and that could cause some major power outages. And because of all the supply chain bottlenecks with China right now, we wouldn't be able to repair those issues in a timely fashion, if at all, in some cases. Now, if it's just 9 power stations that went down, I'm pretty sure that the federal government could muster, some sort of emergency powers in order to get the substations rebuilt or whatever the case. But if it was larger than that, and if we found ourselves in the middle of another conflict in the dead smack of winter like we're approaching here, then things might not be rectified as quickly, okay? So just one more thing to be concerned about, I guess. There's a lot of stuff going on in the last 24 hours. I'm going to save my doom and gloom daily analysis for tomorrow, because this is actually our second video of the day today. The first one was the first part of a series where we talked to Stephen Harris, who's a nuclear survival expert. He co-authored the Nuclear War and Survival Skills book, which was originally authored by Crescent Kearney. And it's just a wealth of knowledge, guys. Free PDF available online. You can buy the hard copy either from wherever you want to buy it. You can get it from CanadianPreparedness.com if you want. But absolute must of a read, and very easy to understand. That's one of the first things I noticed about this book, is that it's very layman friendly, okay? But Stephen's knowledge is very extensive, and it's taken a bit of work in order to make it palatable for the average person in bite size, because, you know, when a person like him knows so much about a topic, it's very easy for our conversations to get very jargonated, and for perhaps, you know, the average person to not that you can't comprehend it, but there's also the element of, you know, we want to keep it interesting enough because it's important that people know this. And if people are not interested in it because perhaps it's not as engaging as it could be, then we're doing a disservice, because we want to make sure that, you know, we not only make the process of learning easy, but also enjoyable as learning about how to survive nuclear war could be. Anyways, go check that video out if you have a chance. It's about 40 minutes, and it's the first in about 3 to 4 parts, a series that we're going to be releasing. And we released some videos yesterday of shotguns and stuff like that. Apparently the algorithm doesn't like it that much, but you can do your part by going and checking out that video as well. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. I'm curious to hear from people who might have worked in the power grid industry in any capacity, what your thoughts are on the vulnerabilities of the grid, and what would you recommend people do in order to prepare for such an eventuality. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.